Guys, welcome back. In this tutorial we are going to add textures to our table and make it look photorealistic like a real table. Alright, so all this while we've been working on the layout viewports, but if you were to render this out and we click on F12, this is what you're actually going to see. Alright, and this is rendering through the UV render engine. But before we go into that, let's dive into shading our table. To add colors to your textures, click on the texture and then come down to this materials property and click on it. At default, you're not going to have any material here, but so you click on new to create a new material. From here you can rename it as table. And what you will always want to touch first is the base color. Change this to red, and it's supposed to change your tabletop to red actually, but it's not. Why is it not? Because this particular viewport is the solid mode. This solid mode, everything has the same color. So for you to see what you're doing, you have to move over to this preview mode, and here you are going to see the color you just added to your mesh. And in this preview mode, it comes with a pre-made light which they call HDRI. That's why you are now having a light source hitting the table from the front. This particular layout is limited. It's limited as it's mainly used for just modeling. But if you want to look at your textures, your materials, you need to come over to this shading viewport. This is the preview mode. Also, as it is, you are not opportune to see almost everything that is in these material properties. Alright, there's a particular windows that is always used when shading or adding textures, which is the shading tab. And this is it. This is the main shading tab, and it is a pre-made tab that has your computer files over here where you can easily locate your textures. It has an editor type here where you can put in your image. It has the main shading workspace over here where you can add your notes and also the outliner and then the properties. Right now we don't need this editor type, which is the image editor, so we just need to close that by that. By the way, I just took my mouse to the top corner of that particular tab, and then when it changes to this target icon, I can click on hold on it and then drag it anywhere I want it to be, and then a new tab will come out. And I can also do the same thing to return it back. You can also do it by hovering your mouse in between two windows that you want to close and right click on it and choose join areas and move your mouse to which area you want Blender to join. And then since you want to close this other part, click on it. Alright, so now we have this, and we are not going to use this either. Now I don't think we even need this to be at the bottom. Let's make it at the side, and let's change this to shader editor. Right, beautiful. This is the principal BSDF at default. If you go to your materials tab, the principal BSDF is what is selected, is the default selected shader which Blender has pre-selected for you to use on your meshes. Alright, it has the base color which you can change to any color of your choice. It has the metallic. I'm naming the ones you most likely use every time. You use the base color and the metallic. What metallic does is, if you crank it up to 1, it makes your surface look like a metal with some reflections on it. You also have the roughness. This roughness determines how reflective your surface is. Like if I change it, if I tune it down to 0, you'll now be seeing the environment that is casting light on the table. Alright, and if I turn it up to 1, you will basically not see anything, because what is rough is not letting light bounce off a particular direction from it. Let's keep it somewhere here. And then the transmission, if you increase this up to 1 and then take down roughness, and if this was at white, you're going to have something that looks like ice. What we need is something that looks like a table. Mainly most tables are brownish black in color. Most of them are brownish yellow in color. So let's go with the color that most fits a table. To make this look very real, we are going to introduce what we call textures. Textures are images that are used to wrap a mesh and make it look real. For us to get a realistic looking table, we will need to add an image texture. And by the way, Shift A also works the same way as it is as in the other viewport. So you click on Shift A and go to texture, locate your image texture, and make sure you connect the color to the base color. Okay, and this will turn this to black. If it were in other Blender versions, you would have seen purple color. But before we go on, you see that the edge of this table and even the sides and almost all other parts are all sharp, accurate 90 degrees, which is not supposed to be so. There is no real life 90-degree object. So to do away with that, you need to go to the modifier and add a bevel modifier. And this bevel modifier, it helps to add bevel just like using the normal Ctrl B to add bevels, but this add bevels procedurally, undestructively. You can move this, just to move this down to something around 0.002. okay, then increase the segments to further smoothing out the corners. Okay, shade smooth too, and make sure you do same to other parts. Add a bevel 0.002 and then give it 3 segments. Alright, let's just check how nice this is. Let's go back to this other wood. Okay, so now we shade that smooth. Do the same over here. 0.002 1 2. Give it 3 iterations. Do this for all the parts of your table, and then we move on. Alright, so now we are done with adding bevels to our table parts to make it look much more realistic. There is what we call face orientations. So you always also gonna need to check that to make sure your meshes are all pointing at the correct direction. So now let's go back to our image textures and connect this to the base, and then make sure you go back to this view, excuse me, so you can see this. There are 2 ways of adding an image texture in Blender. You can use the Shift A to add the image texture, or you can go to where your image textures are and click and hold on it and bring it into Blender. It will bring in the image texture. Alright, so let's make use of this. Alright, connect it to the color. Now you have the wooden look on your table, and this is a step into perfection. You also need to make all parts of your mesh have this. So you can click on this and go to the material property, come down here, click here to show you the already made materials, then click on table to have it, then do the same thing over here, click on this to have it, click on this to have it. But this is getting too tedious. There is a way to copy a shader information from one material to another. Alright, like if I want to make this shading of this image texture go right around now, you need to click on A and then shift click any mesh that has the image texture you want to copy, and then click on Ctrl L to link materials. And when you link the materials, every other part will make sure they have that same texture. Alright, this is not looking really nice with reasons. These black outlines, they are so big and they're not being wrapped around this table as it should be. Like, take a look at the table drawer cover. They have this uniform wrapping, which is not supposed to be so, because in the real life scene, some parts of this will be large and some of it will be very tiny. Most of them are very tiny that you can't even notice it's there. So now this will take us to studying UV unwrapping. We can tweak this using the UV unwrap. How do we use the UV unwrap? First of all, click on this image texture and click on Ctrl T to introduce the mapping node and the texture coordinate. And if you click on Ctrl T and yours is not working, make sure you've turned the Node Wrangler add-on on. Come to your edits and go to preference, then go to add-on and search on Node Wrangler. This is it. Make sure you have it enabled. Mine is enabled already. And then when you have it, come back to the shader, click on it and click on Ctrl T to bring out this tool. The mapping node is used to rotate, move or scale any UV that you've attached to your mesh. Okay, but right now we don't seem to have any UV except the one that Blender has given to us. So what are UVs? UVs are like a wireframe cutout of your 3D meshes. And to see the UV of your mesh, select your mesh and go into tab, which is the edit mode. This is the UV that Blender has already given to our tabletop, and we can still work on this if we need to. We can still unwrap this. Unwrapping is like cutting out your 3D mesh and converting it to a 2D image. And to unwrap in Blender, you have to click on U after selecting your mesh in edit mode, and after clicking on U, click on unwrap, and this Blender has already unwrapped this because this saves as a cube. And if you come here and if you come over here to select this and move it along or move it around, you are going to see the updated image on your mesh. All right, so by so doing, you can scale, you can rotate, and everything is being updated. Okay, so to make this smaller, scale this in, just scale it out, and this mesh should be smaller. All right, so depending on how you want your stuff to be, but in this particular tutorial, let's move it higher. All right, to this point. So now we have something like this, which is pretty much okay. And aside from that, and aside from scaling everything at once, you can select a particular face and still move it. Okay, so it's not subjected to the whole object. You can select its particular face and unwrap. All right, so let's move into the legs. Click on it, click on tab to go into edit mode, select everything, and then come down here to see what Blender has given us or has unwrapped for us at default. Then select it and scale it up. Yeah, something right about there is okay. Then do the same for the table back. You can choose to rotate this around 90. Yeah, to have something plain and nice like this. Alright, about this fine. And for the cupboard, go into edit mode and select all and scale this up. Alright, yeah, you can do that for here too. And in this particular one, I want all of them to have different variations, because from my reference, I want them to have different variation, because from my reference, none of them were actually the same pattern. You know, like plywood being cut, so definitely you're not going to have the same pattern. Actually, you will not have the same pattern because you're not like yeah, I'm okay with that. Let's scale this one, rotate it along, select all, rotate along 90. Yeah, this is okay for me. Select the next drawer cover and come over to the UV, rotate it along 90, move it, yeah, somewhere. Okay, this looks nice. And this is not supposed to share the wooden texture, so we need to give it its own texture. Let's click on this, select it, make sure you have it selected first, then delete that, and then add this texture. Click the new and rename it to metal handle, something that you can easily remember. Bring down the color down to gray or thereabouts, and then increase the metallic and reduce give it 0.4 roughness, something like this. And if it's too dark, you can just turn it up to your liking or something you may like. Okay, all right, do that for these ones, and Ctrl L to link the material. Yeah, now you have something nice looking like a table. Let's move this along y-axis. Definitely all the cupboards inside are going to have the same pattern, but since we are just going to work with the outside part of this table, I think there's no need to unwrap the inner parts. Okay, so now we are done with the UV, and you know what UV is. So let's move on to our shader editor. As we move back to our shader editor. All right, now we have this setup, and right now there's no reflection on this table, which is not supposed to be so. Like some smooth plywood has reflections, and to make use of that reflection, we need to use the roughness map, which comes along with these table textures, and the link to it will be in the description below, so make sure you download it. Get this roughness map, take it into Blender. To preview what this texture does, you can hold Control and Shift and then click on it to give you a preview of what it does. The black parts are going to be reflective, while the white parts are not going to be reflective. And right now you are not going to see a lot of the black because this looks like hash. You need to introduce a color ramp, which is in the converter. It's not necessary that you need to know all this for now, but just following tutorials one after the other will broaden your knowledge to get it one after the other, and that's the best way to learn. So come to this converter and click on the color ramp, keep it in between. Now you can turn up this black, push the black cursor, which is this. You can push it up closer to the white, push the black cursor closer to the white. You can also push the white closer to the black. So the more black color we have on this from this color ramp, the more effective the roughness is going to be. So now if we connect this roughness to the roughness input, if you connect the color output of this color ramp to the roughness input and then preview the principal BSDF, we are going to have a reflective tabletop, because this particular point is reflective, because this particular point isn't reflective while these other ones are reflective. You can also tweak it by working on it from here. Okay, normally this is how tables are supposed to be. Yeah, thereabouts. Let the reflectiveness or the roughness be subtle, not too much. Okay, I still think this is too much, but yeah, this is probably okay. Yeah, this is okay to me. All right. And also you can change the lighting of this particular scene by coming into this shading drop down and clicking on this to change the environment. And this is going to affect your texture, and you're going to see it the way it is if your environment is supposed to have the same lighting pattern as this ones you're selecting. Alright, so now we have a table that has reflections, just looking like the real table in real life. Okay, so now we have something like this. This roughness is not aligning to our UV information. Why? This roughness is not aligning to our UV information because the vector, which is the input of this wood texture that goes into the roughness, has no UV information from our mappings and texture coordinates. So what you need to do is take out the vector output from the mapping and connect it to the vector input of the wood texture that's connected to the roughness, and then the roughness will now be aligned to the UVs of the image, to the UVs of the model. So when you apply it, give some time to load, and then yeah, this is it. You now have it. So now if you turn this back down, you are going to see accurate reflections just in real time. So this is just it. The table is ready to use. And if you also want to go far, adding displacement, you can come over here and draw the displacement into this. Okay, and what we want to do, you want to use this to drive the bump the table, because no table is this plain and flat. All right, so click on Shift A and get a bump node from the vector. You can also preview this by holding Ctrl Shift and click. You're going to see where your bumpiness are going to be. All right, so go back to previewing this, connect the color output to the height, and then connect the normal output of the bump node to the normal. Okay, now you have something like this. You also still need the UV information, so this will be mapped really nice on the mesh. All right, exactly, this is nice, but this looks way too bumpy, and what you have to do right now is change this from color space to non-color and do the same thing here from color space to non-color. Nice. So to reduce this bumpiness, which is too much to me, this bumpiness is an illusion of depth. It makes it feel like the surface is not perfect because of the way light is going to interact with your model. Okay, so most times it is way too much. Blender applies it at default way too much when you connect your image texture. So what you need to do is to tone down the strength of it and give it something way more subtle. Like right about here is okay and nice, around here is okay and nice. You can also increase the intensity of it by using a color ramp. You can duplicate this by using Shift D. You can increase the intensity of it by drawing this up. Okay, and this will increase the area of bumpiness around this stuff. And if I'm to increase this, you'll see the effects that this color ramp has done. Alright, so now we have a realistic looking table. Alright guys, thank you for watching this tutorial. In the next one, we are going to discuss about rendering and a little bit of lighting.